Simmons here.
Grillo here.
Guzikowski here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
And then Alderman Lorick and Mayor Bukewicz are excused tonight, as well as Commissioner Corral. Approval of minutes.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of March 26, 2019.
Hannah seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Simmons, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler abstains.
Approval of minutes for April 9th, 2019.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of April 9th, 2019.
Hannah seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Simmons, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler abstains.
Significant common council actions. Carrie.
Council approved the following: an ordinance approving a conditional use permit for a contractor's office, shop, yard with outdoor storage and truck parking on the properties at 6524 and 6548 South 13th Street. An ordinance amending the official map for a portion of Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map number 8047, mapped unimproved future right-of-way affecting the property at 9330 South Shepherd Avenue. And a resolution approving a certified survey map for Walden OC LLC for the properties at 1700, 1750, 1800, 1816, 1848, 1850, 1900, and 1920 West Drexel Avenue, and 7700 South IKEA Way. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie. All right, looks like we have one public hearing tonight. Let's move on to 5A. We have a comprehensive plan amendment. Carrie?
I will now read the official notice into the record. Notice of the public hearing before the Oak Creek Plan Commission. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider an amendment to the 2020 Vision, a comprehensive plan for the city of Oak Creek, as it relates to the properties at 1001 West Ryan Road and Lot 4 of Certified Survey Map number 9085 with an address to be determined. The hearing date is April 23rd, 2019 at 6 p.m. at the Oak Creek City Hall, 8040 South 6th Street, Oak Creek, Wisconsin 53154 in the Common Council Chambers. The proposed amendment would update the planned land use category in Map 2 in the comprehensive plan from planned industrial to planned business for the properties at 1001 West Ryan Road and Lot 4 of Certified Survey Map number 9085. The Plan Commission may schedule other public meeting items or public hearings for April 23rd, 2019. This hearing may begin at 6 p.m. or as soon as possible following the conclusion of any other public meeting items or public hearings. Any persons with questions regarding the proposed changes may call the Department of Community Development at 414-766-7027 during regular business hours. The date of notice is March 13th, 2019, City of Oak Creek Plan Commission. Daniel J. Bukewicz, Mayor. This is a public hearing. All those wishing to speak, please approach the podium and state your name and address, and please address all questions to the Plan Commission. This hearing is now open.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. I'll make 3 calls. First call. Sir. Name and address, please.
Chuck Kaler, 901 West Ryan Road. This area was recently rezoned to the planned industrial, and I'm curious as to why this wasn't done at that time and what is planning to go in here now that you're planning to rezone it at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I will suggest that we answer all questions at the close of the public hearing.
Second call. Third and final call. All right. Close the public hearing. On to new business, 6A.
The proposal is to change the future land use category and map from planned industrial to planned business for the properties that are located in red on the screen. These are properties that had been acquired previously, and they had been not zoned, but identified in the comprehensive plan for planned industrial. The original intent was for them to be part of the Ryan Business Park, which is to the south of this. The plan is to also include them in that business park. However, as the planning for that business park has proceeded, it's come to the applicant's determination that these properties would more likely be suited for commercial uses. So they are asking for the comprehensive plan to reflect that. Now, the properties that are along Ryan Road are currently identified in the comprehensive plan for the business portion that they are requesting. So parcels in the area are also zoned for these kinds of things. There are planned business, planned industrial, resource protection area, and limited development areas identified in the comprehensive plan just in the general area. The existing uses in the general area include quick service restaurants with drive-throughs to the north and west, a gas station, natural area, retail, and business park to the west and southwest. Ryan Business Park, of course, is to the south. Agricultural and rail lines to the east, agricultural and residential to the east, and grocery distribution and warehousing to the north. So again, the request is for the comprehensive plan to reflect future planned business or commercial on the property. Rezoning would happen at an alternate time. The state of Wisconsin Smart Growth Law requires that all local land use decisions after January 1st, 2010 must be consistent with the objectives, goals, and policies contained within the comprehensive plan. Approval of these changes to the comprehensive plan would bring the plan in line with the intent and goals for future development of those properties. There is a suggested motion, if the Plan Commission agrees with the proposal, that the Plan Commission adopts Resolution 2019-01, amending the comprehensive plan and plan land use map to reflect the changes in land use from planned industrial to planned business for the properties at 1001 West Ryan Road and Lot 4 of a certified survey map 9085, following review and adoption by the Common Council. You'll note that there is a typo in your staff report. The addresses are 1001 West Ryan Road and Lot 4 of certified survey map number 9085. Mr. Chairman.
Hearing. Sean, did that answer the question with the description? Okay.
I understand the mechanics behind this, but I also see 2 job trailers sitting at that property for the last month, so something's gonna go. And it's almost like we're just changing the zoning or changing the comprehensive plan to make this just walk right through, and that's my concern. Is that what's gonna happen? Or what's the process here as to what's going in? Because it's almost like we're closing the door after the horse is out, is what it looks like to me. So I just wanna clarify that there's going to be some public input as to what may or may not go in on that corner.
Well, as we know, when this was switched over to the Ryan Business Park, it was voted on, by the Common Council to become a business park there.
Correct.
So the uses in the business park can vary. So by changing this over to the plan that we have now, that fits in line with the use that they want to use. But we also have Mike Faber here,
Right.
from the business park. So if he would like to speak.
But originally, that property was zoned agricultural, and the reason the city had done that is that they could kind of control the development. I get that.
Yeah.
Then it was changed to planned industrial because of the Ryan Business Park. And that was a process, and that walked through also. Now, we're changing zoning again, but we're really not getting information, the neighbors in that area, as to what's going in. And it's almost like, once the zoning's changed, anything can just go. And I thought the idea of that is to have some neighbor input, because I live right in the heart of that, and I plan to stay there. So I wanna have some input as to what's going in and as it should be. So that's the reason for my appearance here tonight.
I can address some of the process. We have to separate comprehensive plan amendment from rezone. So this is actually changing the plan so that we can proceed to the next step if the Plan Commission and the Common Council ultimately approve of this step. The next step would be rezoning, and at that point, we would be looking at more of a specific plan for these properties, and probably for the properties that are along Ryan Road that have been acquired. These two properties are the only properties that need to be changed back to planned business in the comprehensive plan. There will be public input, there will be public hearings for any kind of rezone and any kind of conditional use that may be presented. So there would be several opportunities for additional public input. I'd like to defer to the applicant, Mike Faber, for additional questions for the Plan Commission.
Thank you. Mike?
Good evening. Hello, Chuck. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, to be very specific about the request,
Excuse me, can we have your name and address, please?
yes, Mike Faber, Capstone Quadrangle. We're the owners and developers of Ryan Business Park. My business address is N17 W24222 Riverwood Drive, Waukesha.
Thank you.
Certainly. When we asked to rezone the two subject properties, our first step was to ask for a comprehensive plan change so that most of what had been parkland would be considered for planned industrial. At that time, we did not own and control the 300-foot deep frontage that faces Ryan Road. And for that reason, we did not anticipate that this land would lend itself to any retail uses. Subsequent to last July, when this Plan Commission and the Council agreed with that comprehensive plan change to consider the subject properties for planned industrial, we were able to acquire the two frontage parcels, which are already in the comprehensive plan for planned business. And because of the power of those already being designated for planned business in the city's vision, and the previous 5 years of the property owner who sold those to us trying to find uses that would fit within those parcels and being unsuccessful, mostly due to the fact that they're only 300 feet deep off of Ryan Road, which tends to limit the type of retail users that would find that depth acceptable. So they struggled, failed, sold the property to us. Now we have the ability to combine those parcels with the parcels that we acquired from Milwaukee County and from the other property owner along Ryan Road to make the properties much deeper. That provides for a much greater flexibility in the types of users that would find that appealing. Frankly, at the city planning staff's request, we have created marketing materials for these properties. And in those marketing materials, we suggest that it might be any type of retail use, including hotel, banks, shops, any kind of use that finds itself that the intersection next to a full four-way interchange with the freeway is a likely type of business user. That's what your highway business zoning tends to fit. Part of the property is already zoned B4 for highway business. And so the extension of that down to the natural barrier of the creek seems very logical to us, and also to our view seems to make it more likely that we will find high-quality retail that would fit that site. In addition, at the planning staff's request, our marketing materials also hold out the possibility and suggest possible uses that would be industrial, but because of the price we paid for that frontage land, a typical industrial won't work financially, and so it would have to be industrial that would be more, I would call it headquarters-y type industrial with a heavy office component compared to typical industrial warehouse, or a research and development use, or something along those lines where there's a more intensive use, some user, say for example, like an astronautics, that would care about the exposure to the full intersection of 13th and Ryan, the let's call it the branding opportunity of being out on the corner. And so we're optimistic that one of those two types of uses will prevail. We think that the odds are 80% likely that the market will respond with higher quality retail uses. Frankly, we've had several small retail users approach us, and we have cautioned them that that's not ready at this time for trying to chop it up into small pieces. We'd rather try to find a higher end retail user that would value that location either for most or all of the site we're talking about, and we'll respond to the market applicants as they come forward through the marketing efforts of our brokers. So hopefully that gives both Chuck and the Plan Commission a feel for why now are we asking to change the comprehensive plan so that that whole piece, which we now own, can be repositioned for planned business. And I think, frankly, it's perfectly suitable for the public, including Mr. Kaler, to consider and weigh in on. This is an opportunity to consider whether planned business is a suitable use there. I would say that it is because approximately half of the site is already guided for planned business in your comprehensive plan, which is what encouraged us to acquire that property. Certainly.
Questions?
I have a question for Carrie. Will this change go into our new comprehensive plan that we're developing right now?
Yes, and all changes from the comprehensive plan previously and moving forward will all be incorporated into the comprehensive plan that will be adopted later this year.
Thank you.
Enter questions then. All right, thank you, Mike.
Certainly.
Sean, did that answer your questions more so? Chuck, sorry about that. I had Sean written down. I apologize.
And Mr. Faber's intentions are great. He's got good ideas. The only concern I have is that once this is rezoned, can anything walk through there, or does it still have to go before the city for approvals? Because once you change the zoning, then anything that fits in that zoning area is allowed without any input. Is that correct?
No, I believe that it still has to come before us.
Any rezone request would come before the Plan Commission and the Common Council. Any conditional use, which is a use that has been identified in that zoning district as needing additional scrutiny and additional conditions and restrictions, will also come before the Plan Commission and the Common Council. Once that is approved, all of the site and building plans will also come before the Plan Commission for approval. So there's at least 2 or 3 more steps for public input.
So the purpose of this is just to adopt it into the comprehensive plan. Zoning is not taking place at this time.
That is correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Motion?
Motion.
Seifert moves that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution 2019-01, amending the comprehensive plan and planned land use map to reflect the changes in land use from planned industrial to planned business for the properties at 1001 West Ryan Road and Lot 4 of the certified survey map number 9085, address to be determined, following review and adoption by the Common Council.
Chandler seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Simmons, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Moving on to 6B. Conditions and restrictions.
So as the Plan Commission will recall, at the previous meeting on April 9th, there was a recommendation for Common Council approval of a planned unit development for a multifamily residential development on the property at 7581 South 13th Street. And that proposal was submitted by Jason Macklin of Wingspan Development Group. So tonight we are here to discuss the proposed conditions and restrictions for that planned unit development. If the Plan Commissioners will turn to page 2 of 9, Section 3A, There shall be a maximum of 6 three-story multifamily buildings, a maximum of 3 two-story multifamily buildings, and a maximum of 300 units. Accessory buildings, garages, a clubhouse, and a pool may be permitted so long as they are compliant with all applicable provisions of the municipal code as amended and these conditions and restrictions. 3D, the clubhouse and pool shall be constructed as part of the initial phase of the development and must be completed prior to or concurrent with the issuance of occupancy permits for any residential buildings. Under 4D, there is some change to the proposed language there after review and discussion with the applicant. The proposed language now reads, "A cross-access easement on the south side of the property of such shall be provided with a copy of such executed agreement provided to the city prior to the issuance of any permits for any phase in this development." That still requires an easement. It's just specifying it's on the southern end of this subject property. On page 3 of 9, there is also a change to the requested time of compliance. Rather than 12 months, all iterations shall be 18 months. If the Plan Commission is satisfied with these conditions and restrictions as amended before here tonight, there is a suggested motion that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopts the conditions and restrictions as part of the multifamily residential plan unit development for the property at 7581 South 13th Street after a public hearing. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie. Comments, questions, concerns?
I don't know if it's a comment/question. I see here that this is going to be planned part of a wetland area. How are they planning to address that?
There's one section of wetland fill that's been proposed, and that's near the clubhouse, and then that also continues for the development road into the development. For the remainder of the wetlands, they will be undisturbed. The majority of the wetland complex is in the northeast corner. That will not be part of the development. That'll stay as is.
So they are planning to compensate for the disturbed areas or no?
They are planning to obtain a wetland fill, and the wetland fill, I believe, is for approximately 19,000 square feet.
The floodplain, how are they going to be
Floodplain will not be affected by the proposal.
on the buildings or anything like that?
No, the floodplain is in the northeast corner as well.
Right?
Excuse me, no real concerns. Stormwater, all the general things engineering is looking for are accounted for in the agreement. We know there will be a development agreement for some public sidewalk, and there's public water main, private interceptor sewer, so all of those items would normally be covered by a development agreement, so we're good with all that. The TIA, we have seen that, and there's some minor requirements for 13th Street at the entrance, so I'll just make sure that that's all addressed in the plans.
Thank you.
I just have a question about the expressway and the easement on the west side. Is there any interference with how far the development can go to that expressway easement?
The boundary of the property is outside of that easement.
Okay, I'm just curious if it butted up to that.
No, it's property line to property line. It doesn't actually go into the right-of-way.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for the applicant.
Name and address, please.
Jason Macklin, 1001 Feehanville Drive in Mount Prospect, Illinois.
Can you provide a little more information on why the change from 12 months to 18 months for time of compliance?
Of course. So as part of our permitting process, we have to go through the DNR and the Army Corps of Engineers. And the Army Corps of Engineers can be a lengthy process. So we just want to ensure that we have adequate time to go through that process and still maintain our entitlements.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chandler makes a motion that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopts the conditions and restrictions as part of the multifamily residential planned unit development for the property at 7581 South 13th Street after a public hearing.
Hannah seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, I.
Simmons, aye.
Grillo, I.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Moving on to 6C. Sir? On the last one? On the one we just talked about? Sure, come on up. Did you have a, black? Oh. Sorry about that. Name and address,
My
please.
name is George Roshinsky. I'm at 7650 South 13th. I've been there for, I'd say, about 14 years. There's been a lot of development there, and there's more. My major concern is, well, you were talking about wildlife delineation, and there is some adjacent to my property. And I basically moved there just for, well, to get away from the city and congestion and enjoy nature. Okay, a lot of my neighbors do the same. Excuse me. Now I noticed they developed 13th Street. They widened it. They made it bigger. Traffic's traffic. But with this development, I mean, every time there's an accident on 94, 13th Street is like bumper to bumper, and there's a lot of accidents. And with this proposed unit, how are these people going to go into this unit and out of this unit to work and back home without a stalemate of traffic? It doesn't make any sense. I think it's really, there's so many areas that doesn't have residential properties in the Oak Creek area, and Franklin and this and that, but I think it's really, kind of like Joan Baez says, put up a parking lot, it's just the way I feel. And like I said, I just think it's, now correct me if I'm wrong, across in that area, wasn't there an Oak Creek Park at one time? Or am I mistaken?
Oak Creek.
Or there wasn't?
No.
Okay, because I like walking through woods and,
Yeah.
and I noticed there was a foundation in there, and someone told me, I don't know if it's correct or not, that there was at one time a park there. But maybe there wasn't. But like I said, it's just it's a beautiful area. There's a lot of wildlife, and I don't want to go way up to Burnett County or something just to be, away from congestion. So that's my point, and I'm totally against it. So, thank you.
Thank you, George. Moving on to 6C. Plan review here.
The request is for site building, landscaping, lighting, and related plan review submitted by Tim Culver of the Oak Creek Franklin Joint School District for a new soccer stadium with a parking lot on the Oak Creek High School property at 340 East Putes Road. On the screen before you is actually the existing condition of the property, and it's in a portion of the property that's just along Putes. It's south of the football stadium and south of Edgewood. And on the screen before you is the proposal. You can see that it's a large soccer stadium field with adjacent parking and stormwater infrastructure. It's a natural turf soccer stadium. There will also be associated bleachers, a press box. It'll be surrounded by an 8-foot tall chain link fence. There will be lighting on the field. The adjacent parking will provide room for 226 stalls. And of course, the stormwater basin that's on the plans here, that stormwater basin will be to replace the 2 existing basins that are south of the football field. Setbacks appear to be met in the proposal, with the exception of the parking lot. It is unclear whether or not that parking lot meets the 15-foot setback, and that'll just need to be verified. Per code, the Plan Commission has the authority to determine the required opacity of security fencing, and since this is a fence around a soccer stadium, there's also a fence around the stormwater basin for security purposes. Instead of the privacy slats that we normally see, there is a recommendation or a suggestion that the fence be covered in a black vinyl coating. That's just something to kind of blend in the fence rather than call attention to it. We have not received details for the press box or the signs and scoreboards, so we would be requiring those in revised plans. At a minimum, the signs would require permits. They may require additional review, and we will work with the applicant on what those required reviews would be. Landscape plans have also been submitted, mostly for the area just south of the soccer stadium and around the proposed parking. It's a little bit difficult to see in this plan, but we do need a couple of more details for this, including the heights of the plants at maturity and installation. There may be a couple of requirements to block or to further buffer the parking lot from the street as well. If the Plan Commission is satisfied with these proposed plans, there is a suggested motion that the Plan Commission approves the site plans submitted by the Oak Creek Franklin Joint School District for the property at 340 East Putes Road, subject to conditions 1 through 4. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie. We do have couple of people that would like to speak on this. Arden Dagner, Mr. Dagner.
Arden Degner, 8540 South Pennsylvania Avenue. If you look at this layout of school district property, you will notice that our Miller Park is in the upper left-hand corner. I don't understand how this can be accomplished to have a planned vista on this corner. Presently, as you will know, I pass it a number of times. I've always enjoyed, in fact, my children enjoyed playing baseball on that property. Oh, it's going to be gone. All we'll have is an 8-foot-high black fence. Now, I can understand this plan based on the city requirements for stormwater. But if we look at the drainage map, it might be possible to incorporate Miller Park into this. Why? Because Miller Park doesn't have the well anymore. And think of what you have done with the Drexel Town Square, with that way across from the high school here, the pond. I challenge the Plan Commission to work out something in this area that would also afford pleasant vista with this development. To me, it's nothing but a sticks and stones interruption along the road, not a pleasant vista. And we've had now, when this was originally part of the all this property right up to Miller Park is part of the school district. But yet we know that all these restrictions with stormwater and so were accomplished before the high school was even built. And isn't there a way that we could accommodate some of this with some really thought out, pleasant vista like we have here now? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tegner. We also have Tom Schmidt. Okay, thank you, sir. Alrighty. Plan Commission. Questions, comments, or concerns?
I have a question. When you talked about the chain link fence, is that just around the field itself? Does it go, I'm assuming not the parking lot?
It does not go around the parking lot. It'll go around the soccer field, and it will go around the stormwater pond.
Oh, around the, okay, around the pond. And then I'm assuming those are bleachers in
Yes.
that line drawing? So those would be inside as well?
I believe so, yes, because there's a gate. So it won't go, I don't think it'll go around the entirety of the bleacher area, but if the applicant can correct me if I'm wrong.
Applicant here.
Jason Christensen, Nielsen, Madsen and Barber, civil consultant for the district. Address 1458 Horizon Boulevard, Racine, Wisconsin. So the fencing will surround the bleachers. There will be gates that you'll have to go through to get to the bleacher section. And then there will be a small fence between the bleachers and the field.
And the reason for the fence around the stormwater basin?
Just for safety, to keep students and the public out of it.
I have a question about the soil condition. That whole area is pretty low, and really the drainage that you have always comes into that southeast corner of that whole area. And I'm just wondering how you're going to support that to prevent sinking or problems with that field.
Yeah, so the soccer field is going to be raised up above the existing grade, and also that stormwater pond. We have storm sewers that are going to be picking up the Edgewood Elementary site as well. So all that runoff that comes off the hillside from the north is going to be captured with storm sewer and brought underground and into the pond. So we're going to be improving the soil conditions out there by doing the project.
What about the hill for the parking that you're talking about on the north side of that stadium? Is that hill going to be tapered or?
Yeah, the hill will be recontoured slightly. We're going to be filling the existing dry basin that's immediately east of the football field there. And then there's going to be additional improvements on the Edgewood site up on top of the hill. But we will have grading, we will have some retaining walls between the two sites, and drainage swales and storm sewers.
That parking lot also going to connect with Edgewood School's parking lot?
There is a sidewalk that's going to connect the two sites from the what would be northeast corner of the soccer parking lot. There will be a sidewalk that runs to the north and will attach to the new parking lot at Edgewood.
Which parking lot is it going to be connected to?
The new parking lot at Edgewood Elementary, just south of the tennis courts.
Okay.
That exists to the north. So there's going to be sidewalk connection to that parking lot to the north, as well as a sidewalk connection to the entrance of the football stadium and leading up to the high school.
Where is the exit going to be for that parking lot or entrance?
It's going to be at the same entrance in and out of the high school that exists today.
I also have a question for the applicant. Can you provide a little more information on why the location changed from the middle school to this property?
The middle school they have planned, which is coming up next on the agenda, they have a varsity softball and baseball field planned over there, and that's currently where their varsity soccer is being housed. So they're kind of reconfiguring some of their athletics throughout the districts.
So why isn't the soccer field staying in that location with the middle school since it's already there?
Because they're replacing that with baseball and softball. So the soccer field at East is going to be demolished and replaced with baseball and softball fields. And so that soccer field had to be relocated somewhere else.
So let me make sure I understand. The soccer field is used for both properties, correct? Meaning the high school as well as the middle school.
Yeah, it is a varsity soccer field on the East Middle School property right now. It just happens to be located there, but it is a varsity soccer field at the moment. So it's essentially being relocated from the East Middle School to the high school property.
So the middle school does not use it? Is that what you're?
No, the middle school does not.
Thank you.
Oh.
Do we have an idea of cost of this soccer field?
Yes, the district does have an idea on cost. Off the top of my head, I don't know what the soccer field specifically costs.
Other questions or comments?
Mr. Degner made some good points, and I'm not seeing that I have all the detail in the plan here on regarding the pond. First, I like the proposal for the colored fence fabric as opposed to just either the slats, and that's going to close everything off, versus than just the steel cyclone fence, the aluminum fence that does not look so great. I think that with the black color, that'll kind of allow people to see through. The pond, on the landscaping plan, I just see kind of a dot pattern. Can you explain what that is? Is that, are those plantings, are those grasses, natural grasses, or what is that?
Yeah, the dots that you see in the landscaping plan is just a lawn seed mix.
Okay, so
they're
that's
ju-
just
yeah, they're
regular
just-
turf grass?
Correct, yeah. Well,
Nice to see
within
something.
the stormwater basin, we'll likely have some sort of, low mow stormwater mix that doesn't have to be mowed every week. But outside of the fenced area would be just a typical lawn.
Right, I get that outside, but I'm thinking if there's something that, some kind of a natural native grass or something that would grow along the water line, give that, enhance the natural appearance of the pond. So it'd be nice if that was incorporated.
I actually have a comment versus a question, and I'm not sure who to address this to, but I have a concern with the cost. Because to prep a soil like this, that large, for it to be that poor of a soil, to be able to use it for soccer is actually, versus using already ready land, that's a lot of cost to prep that type of soil. So it's not for you to answer, but I'm just saying I have a concern with that, major concern.
All this, was all voted on with at the referendum,
Understood.
so we're really just being stewards of what they're bringing to the plan commission here and have to responsibly answer and produce what we give back and produce at the meeting results here.
One more question. Is the field lit? Is there lighting?
Yes, the field will be lit.
I have a question about parking. What if we have a football game, a soccer game, activities? Can our parking lot hold all the traffic if there are two activities at the same time?
As far as two activities at the same time, it is my understanding that they would not be scheduled at the same time. However, we are providing, I believe, around 250 additional spaces on this site as part of this project.
Barry, does that fall into our requirements?
We don't have any specific requirements
Okay.
for a soccer stadium.
Well, I was kind of looking at the whole, I'm just kind of going over when we have a football game at night, that we've got parking up and down the streets, the parking lots are full. We do run into a little problem with the traffic and parking.
Seems
If we had two activities, and that's all I'm getting at, is can we handle that situation?
It seems like if they have a parking lot at Edgewood and they had a sidewalk to get from one location to the other, that could serve as another location, a park.
Just curious, because we live in the area and.
No, I get
and
that,
all
yeah.
street parking during those games of football, it's very congested. And then if you throw in community center parking lot, where do you go?
Andy Cromie, Chief Business and Finance Officer for the school district, 7630 South 10th Street. We do not schedule a soccer game opposite a varsity football game. And really, in thinking about all sports outside of varsity football, most sports are not highly attended. So even a varsity soccer field or a varsity soccer game might have a couple of hundred people there, while a varsity football game has several thousand. So, but we wouldn't schedule them at the same time.
And let's go to the next question. Why did you choose this site for the soccer field instead of Avonsheen Park, where we have open land that doesn't have soil problems like we do here?
Because we do not own Abendschein Park. We own that piece of
I
land.
understand you owned it, but we still have a baseball diamond that the high school uses for all their activities.
Right. Our intention is to get sports facilities on our sites and not be dependent upon an agreement with the city to have those sites available. Sure.
Is there any cost-benefit analysis done between this site and any other sites in the vicinity?
The only other potential site we have would be West Middle School in the back, and we would be trucking in a ton of dirt to do that too. It would be approximately the same what we'd have to do over there versus here.
Same type of soil?
We'd have to do a lot of grading in the back to get that site prepped and ready. The advantage of moving it here is our kids are already at the high school. They're walking over to a field versus now we're transporting them to another site and increasing our cost for transportation.
So there has been a cost-benefit analysis done.
Yep, we've taken a look at that site.
Is that you're going to be able to share that with any of the public who ask for that?
Truth be told, I don't know if we have it easily available, but the people that we have consulted with have given us as the recommendation to move forward with.
How about traffic impact analysis has been done for the parking lot?
That I'm not aware of.
Can you give us a cost to this stadium?
I do not have that with me tonight, but was stated that was part of the referendum projects and all budgeted within the $60.9 million of the holistic projects that we're doing.
I don't recall seeing this project, though, when that referendum came up.
It certainly was. We talked about it under the athletics and activities event. So it would have been varsity softball field and varsity baseball at East Middle School, and then the soccer field moving over to the high school.
I do have a question about setbacks. Can you assist with
Jason will be able to answer the setback question.
if you can just clarify the setbacks specific to the parking lot?
Yes, there is a 15-foot setback to the parking there, and we are meeting that. That dimension was just not denoted on the plan, but we are meeting that setback.
Thank you.
So I can say that my middle daughter played soccer at the high school. And when she was probably a sophomore, that's when it started up at the East Middle School. And I can tell you that when you have freshman and sophomore kids trying to get them there when their parents are working, it's not the easiest thing to figure out. So they were the first teams, soccer varsity teams to play over there and help build the scoreboard that's over there. So it's good to see it being relocated, I feel, back to the high school for those reasons.
I have a question in regards to that. So it was more beneficial to move soccer to the high school, even though soccer was at the junior high, and move baseball to the junior high, even though you have to move kids as well.
So we're trying to think long-term, and our baseball and softball team can travel on the same bus, and they often play at the same times. So the ability to transport a baseball team and a softball field on one, or a softball team on one bus, rather than trying to cart a couple of buses around, was one of the advantageous things for us. As well as on this particular site, possibly putting a softball diamond on there would have been feasible. A baseball diamond would have been extremely tight, but we already have another softball field already at the middle school, so this would allow us to put our JV and our varsity softball fields on the same site. And because baseball would have been extremely tight there, it made sense to try to coordinate those two sports together, single concession stand, kind of a single, or trying to get as many consolidated items given that they're similar sports.
Okay, another quick question that I've been asked by fellow neighbors. When we put the turf in for the football stadium, it was discussed that this would be for soccer as well and all other sports. But clearly, we aren't doing that. We're building our own soccer stadium next to the football stadium. So that never worked out, or why do we need a soccer stadium?
So I can't speak to how it was originally put in. I wasn't here at that time. But it's my understanding that soccer lines would go to the track. So you would be playing tight to the track to play a soccer in that particular
Okay, so even though we were
size field.
sold on that, that's why we put the turf in, and that's why we, made
Can't
that
speak to how
stadium.
it was sold. Again, I wasn't here at that particular time, but
So it was
the
never
soccer
intended.
field is very tight to play in that particular space.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, we have a motion here?
I will. Hannah moves that the Plan Commission approve the site plans submitted by Oak Creek Franklin Joint School District for the property at 34 East Buttes Road with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that the chain link fence is finished with a black vinyl coating and plans revised to reflect that change. 3, that the landscape plan is revised to include the heights of plants at installation and maturity. 4, that all revised plans, site, building, landscaping, east elevation, etc., are submitted in digital format for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications.
Perillo, a second.
Before there's a roll call, I just want to clarify, I think this is a great conversation, and I appreciate everybody's comments. We are voting on the proposal before us, and I think that while the referendum may have included some cost considerations, we have to take cost consideration out of a site plan approval.
Right.
So I just want to make that clear, that this is not based on cost considerations, even though that was part of the referendum. So I understand the concern. Just want to make that clear.
Roll call?
Hannah, no.
Simmons, aye.
Perillo, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
You have to come up to the microphone.
My name's David Pomfret. I live at 9116 South Shepherd Avenue. And I'm looking at all this going on. You're going to be building your varsity baseball field right behind my house, putting up a bunch of lights, so I guess I can take my light bulbs out at night. You guys will light up my house for me. What I'm seeing here, and I apologize, I don't mean to offend anybody, is our buddies from the school district, as long as I own a house and I have a job, and I'm paying property taxes, they can get a rubber stamp from you people for whatever the hell they want to do. $60 million to move baseball fields, soccer fields. When the hell is going to end? That's my money, guys. We rely on you to protect us. I don't even know what the property value of my house is going to be when this is done. Somebody has to protect the citizens of Oak Creek. Thank you.
Alrighty, moving on to 6D. Plan review, please. Carrie,
60 is a plan review for site building, landscaping, lighting, and related plans submitted by Tim Culver of Oak Creek Franklin Joint School District for new varsity baseball and softball fields, bleachers, concessions building, and parking area on the East Middle School property, which is highlighted in red on the screen. These are the existing conditions on the property. It's a little bit difficult to determine, but the gray area are the access drives and the current parking areas. What is on the screen right now is the proposed baseball and softball stadium. So for orientation's sake, north is actually on the left side of the screen. The baseball field is actually on the lower left-hand corner here. Included with the plans are dugouts, batting cages, field lighting, bleachers, press boxes, a concession stand, and a 148-stall parking lot with related stormwater infrastructure. This will orient you north now. Each field will be surrounded by an 8-foot-tall chain link fence. The baseball field will have a 24-foot-tall backstop. The softball field will have a 20-foot-tall backstop. Setbacks appear to be met in the proposal. Staff does have a concern, as was raised in the staff report, for the potential effect of baseball field lighting and the scoreboard on the residential properties that are along Shepherd Avenue. Although there was a landscape plan that was submitted, it does not include any buffer area between the baseball field and those properties. There's a small tree line area, and then there's also a wetland area on the the northwest corner. And while we do have photometric plans showing the lighting for the fields, the photometric plan does not actually show the lighting effect at the property line. So we do still have a concern for that. We would like some more information as regards that. It is up to the Plan Commission whether or not additional landscaping or some kind of barrier between those baseball field areas and those residential properties along Shepherd Avenue will be required. We do also have a requirement for the landscape plans to be revised to incorporate heights of the proposed plants at installation and maturity. Right now, the landscape plans show plantings within that proposed parking area on the south. We also are missing details for the press box and signage or scoreboards. Those will also be required in the revised plans as with the previous soccer field. At minimum, signs will require permits and variances may also be required. On the screen right now are what the proposed elevations for the dugouts and the concession stand will be. Those exterior building materials include ground face CMU in 2 colors, vertical sliding panel accents in blue, and a standing seam roof panel. If the Plan Commission is satisfied with the plans as proposed, there is a suggested motion that the Plan Commission approves the site plan submitted by the Oak Creek Franklin Joint School District for the property at 9330 South Shepherd Avenue, subject to conditions 1 through 3. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie. Comments or questions?
Is the applicant here? I have a question for the applicant. This is in regards to the buffer for the resident.
Yep, Andy Cromie, Chief Business and Finance Officer for the school district, 7630 South 10th Street.
Just a question about the buffer between the residential area. Can we have a little more information on if there
I'm going to
will
refer to
be
Jason on
one
that.
and what that looks like?
Jason Christensen, Nielsen, Madsen and Barber, civil consultant, 1458 Horizon Boulevard, Racine, Wisconsin. So the buffer, you're speaking of the buffer between the athletic fields and the residents to the west?
That's correct.
Yes, currently right now on the plan, we are not showing any sort of landscaping there. That can be amended. We can include that. The current plan does not have that, but if it's a concern, that's something that we can address in the plans.
So, quick question for Carrie. So, what would a buffer look like in that area so we can provide the applicant more information?
That would be something that I think the Plan Commission could consider separately. You could require that the landscape plans come back for additional review, along with the signage or scoreboards if necessary. So rather than try and create some kind of landscaping plan on the fly here tonight, staff can work with the applicant to come up with something, and in consideration of the neighbors along Shepherd Avenue, something that's dense and works with the landscaping there to provide some kind of buffer to present to the Plan Commission. You do have the authority to require that.
Real quick question too, are we just worried about the neighbors on Shepherd, or is there any other neighbors that are affected by this?
There is an open field to the north of this. However, I believe there is another house along Shepherd Avenue that is to the north of this. The concern would be that there's wetlands there that are on the northeast or the northwest side that won't be affected by the proposal. The concern might actually be for the lighting. So if we could talk a little bit more about how the fields will be lit and what the range is, how are the lights shielded, where are they angled, those kinds of things.
Carrie, on the third to last page. Okay, the third to last page, we submitted the photometric plan for the entire site, and it does show the limit of the lights. So that blue line that you see on the screen there, that would be the limit between any minor light versus no light effect from the proposed lighting.
So explain the difference between minor light and no light.
So that line is basically, the lighting is measured in lumens, so essentially where the proposed lighting that we are showing at the ground level, you either have some light residual effect at that location or you do not. Obviously, the intensity gets greater as you work towards the proposed light poles, and then once you get beyond that blue line, there is no light effect on the ground.
Quick question, Carrie. Where are the residents on this map?
It's getting a little bit lost in the individual numbers that are on here, but if you look to the left of that, the houses are outlined in purple.
So it looks like at least one house is definitely impacted by the lighting effect. Am I understanding this correctly? Well, I shouldn't say at least one. It's very close to several and overlapping with one house. Am I understanding this lighting effect?
Correct.
correctly?
Yep. It's important to note, though, that our varsity softball and varsity baseball games start at 4:30 p.m. Typical softball game is about an hour and a half, so that would end at 6 o'clock. A typical baseball game is about 2 hours, ending at about 6:30. The need for lights is going to be very minimal, if any, whatsoever, to have them on, much less to have them on when it is dark outside. So, for instance, right now, it's about 7 o'clock at nighttime. Our team is playing. Lights would be on. They would be hardly noticeable, if anything, given the light that's out right now. We play spring baseball, so we've been playing for roughly a month, maybe, most of that practice. And so we're going to be having lights on at times when it is right now. It's not Friday night football game where that is the thing showing in the sky. So it's important to note that those times are going to be very minimal, if any, when the light will actually have any effect whatsoever on anything outside of the actual game itself.
And when you say spring baseball, is that
The season that we play is the end of March to approximately the end of May.
Thank you.
And my question would be, why need the lights then?
There's a requirement at certain times of darkness, I'll call it, but as the sun is going down, there's a requirement by the WIA to have lights on, given the ball and the danger of having it hit at you, I guess.
And there won't be practice after games late?
No. Correct.
And we will not rent this facility?
I wouldn't say that, but we would have a strong issue with renting it at nighttime. Part of our goal is to try to get games as early as possible. And right now in the city of Oak Creek, there's only one varsity softball field or one varsity baseball field at Abendschein. So our goal is to have kids playing on that field, freshmen and JV, and varsity playing here, so that we're trying to avoid nighttime whatsoever. But I wouldn't say we would never rent it, but typical rentals for a baseball field are on the weekends when tournaments are played, and they're playing from dawn till about dusk. They're typically not playing those at nighttime.
Would that be a requirement that we add? You know, so that they can't rent it until
I don't think that we
midnight?
have any authority to require them to not rent this field out.
Okay.
I would have a question, though. You you speak in lumens, and our code is based on foot candles. So can you kind of give us the translation between lumens and foot candles?
Yeah, that is correct. It is foot candles. I'm not an electrical engineer. That was not my plan, just included. But you are right. It is foot candles and not lumens.
So I think that we have a concern for the shielding of the lights and the angle of the lights, as well as the fact that we do have a requirement for no trespass of more than half a foot candle at the property line. So can you address those concerns?
Yes, that requirement will be met here. That's something that if that's not on the plan, we will show that and we will modify the plan to meet that requirement.
So how are you angling the light fixtures themselves?
The light fixtures are aimed at the field.
So they're facing away from, and they're shielded away from the homes that are along Shepherd?
Yes, that is correct.
I guess I don't understand, because if it's focused away from the homes, why is light going towards the homes? I guess I'm unclear. Can you help me understand?
You still have ambient light that's produced, so even though the light might be shining that way, you still have an area over here that might be a little bit brighter just because that light is on.
Behind the light? I guess, okay, let me ask a different question. So where is the lighting located? Maybe that'll help.
The lighting on the plan that you see right now, C3, you can kind of see the X with the circle around it, and C4. So there's one located in what would be left center and one located in right center field. There are additional lights in the parking lot as well as the third base and first base foul lines for each school. So the varsity baseball field has a total of 6 light poles associated with it, and the softball field has a total of 4.
So the field, what do you call it? The effect that's closest to the homes is coming from C3, or is it coming from C4, where actually it could face a portion of the homes?
Yes, they are coming from primarily C3. I can't say whether C4 isn't contributing some. It might be, but obviously C3 is the closest one, and that is the one that's producing the light in the backyards. Correct, but that is the one that is producing the ambient light. And
Commissioners,
in
any
it,
other questions?
I do have a question here.
Hold on, sir. Hold on. Sit down, please.
I do have a question for you. Have you investigated any type of lights out there, especially if there's location of this field closer to homes, if there is any lights that may have shields or something to focus and correct or direct the light toward the field?
that is something that can be investigated further. This lighting system here is what was recommended to us by the athletic lighting consultant that we're using.
My question is, how does the lighting that's already there at the fields compare to what you're putting in? Is it going to be same or different?
That's something we can look at. I don't believe we have run an existing photometric analysis, but that's something that we can look into.
Ready. So with any other questions from the commissioners?
And if we're looking into that, what would a fence or foliage or what would anything help in regards to, are those lights just too high and there's nothing that would help make a barrier?
Yeah, and that's something that would all be analyzed by the site lighting consultant.
One last question for me. Have you held public information meeting for the resident to get their input in this?
No, I do not believe so.
In my opinion, I think that needs to be done. Public informational meeting for something like that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. We already have a facility that's adequate and does the job, and now we have to build another one. I really think that's overkill, and I really think that they're taking advantage of the citizens of Oak Creek. But we have a facility. I don't think we need an additional facility at that location. And I think they should utilize the facility that they have and improve it if they want, and also provide a softball diamond if they want to put that there. But I think this is a wrong location for these 2 baseball diamonds. Also, you've got a development that's going on the east side of the high school, or the junior high, that's coming in there, and there's going to be another 65, 70 homes that'll be coming in the next year that could also present a problem. So I'm not in favor of this proposal.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Any other questions or comments? Okay, then we have some some questions. Hold on, sir. Hold on, sir. Hold on. So 6C, we have Tom Schmidt.
Tom Schmidt, 9136 South Shepherd Avenue. I'm one of the neighbors. My main concern, I need some questions answered, I guess. I'm basically concerned about the buffer zone that they were talking about. Right now, we have the soccer field down there, and behind that is, I think they called it a practice soccer field, which is really used by the junior high quite a bit for all different athletic events in the spring and fall. And then there is a part after that goes up about 3 feet, and then it just goes up to the property line with a gradual up to my property line. The buffer zone is perfect. I don't have any problem with it. I've never had a problem with any kids or anything like that. It's ideal. I just want to know what's going to change on that buffer zone, basically. Is the tree line going to stay? Is the grade going to change? Is that going to go down or go up, or is it going to stay about the same? I guess the other big question I have, or not big question, small question, is what's the start date plan for this? Is this year or next year or whenever? Thank you.
Can you answer any of those questions, or should we take them all down and answer at the end?
Why don't we, the start date would have to be answered by the applicant, and as far as the buffer zone is concerned, I think what I'm hearing from everybody is there's a concern for lighting and for that landscape buffer. So if the Plan Commission is of the mindset that that should come back to the Plan Commission,
Yes.
then that would be something that would also be looked at by the staff in consultation with the applicant to make sure that there would be a landscape buffer that would be presented to the Plan Commission and the residents along that area. So while I don't have a specific answer for that, what would be in that area, because we would have to design it, there would be consideration for additional plantings and things like that based on input that we've heard tonight.
And then 6D, Dave Copland.
Dave Copland, 9150 South Shepherd Avenue. And I have the property where the lights are going to be shining in my roof. I have a bunch of questions. Now, if I state the questions, will they be answered or written down, or is this being recorded? Okay. The question I have was, when would the construction begin? That's one of them, which we haven't answered. Will there be restrooms available? Now there's a porta potty out there, one porta potty for the soccer field. Is it going to be used for summer ball? I understand there is summer baseball that's played over at Amenshine Park. It's a varsity baseball league that was already stated the games are played on after school and so forth. Even with the games being played for soccer that are down there, there's times when the soccer game is over at 7 o'clock or 7:30, 8 o'clock because they're in fall, but those lights don't get shut off till 10 o'clock, like somebody forgets to go turn them off. So there's a lot of wasted electricity when that happens. When the kids come to practice soccer or play soccer, they're walking over from the high school or getting by cars and so forth, and they're cutting through the properties, residential properties on the way instead of following around, walking through the school drive to access that field. The other thing was how far to the west lot line would they be coming? Tom Schmidt spoke about the level of the grade. The soccer field and the practice field are at one grade, and there's about a 4 or 5 foot increase for part of the area up until it hits the west property line. So there's probably going to have to be some grading there. Now, if that's dropped like 4 feet to make it all level in one surface, any plantings you put in there are going to have to be 40 or 50 feet high, because from that level that the games are played on to our backyards are approximately 15 feet or 18 feet higher. And where does the school practice now? I mean, would there be practice days there at the field along with games? I don't know. That was another question. And also, with the motion that you have stated on the page, I think the address is wrong in there. It's a property at 9330 instead of 340.
Yes, we did notice that typo. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. Sir?
Out earlier next time. One of the things he brought up, and I'm sorry, David Pomfret, 9116 South Shepherd, was the lights. The games end 6, 7 o'clock. Well, now you got to get the team off the field. You got to clean up the field. You got to do whatever they have to do. And again, they don't go off until late at night. It's just as bad with the lights being on as once you get used to the lights go off. Now they just woke you up. Again, I don't want to step on anybody's feet. My son loved playing baseball. He played for Oak Creek, but when do the residents matter? And that's all that matters right now is you guys represent us. They represent the school district. What's the best way we can make this work? And I'm being selfish because I live in this area. I don't want to be bothered by this. It's the same thing as everybody wants a jail, but nobody wants it in their backyard. I guess that's what I'm saying. If you can make it so that my backyard doesn't become somebody else's playground, maybe we can talk.
All right, Carrie, should we circle around and see if we can hit any of the answers that we can get from the applicant real quick? Or you?
With regard to the buffer, I think I tried to answer that. We will work with the applicant on a revised landscape plan to address the buffer yard area. As far as the lighting is concerned, that would be something that we would want additional information on as well. When the construction would start, whether restrooms will be available, if there's going to be summer baseball in addition to the spring baseball, if there could be timers for the lights or who's going to be responsible for turning the lights off. These are questions that would have to be answered by the applicant. As far as cutting through property, I'm not sure that anything other than a fence on the property could prevent that. No trespassing signs, things like that. Entrance here, these are just things that I'm spitballing at the moment. And then one of the concerns was the grading and how that would affect the properties that are along Shepherd Avenue, and then also where practices will be held. And those are making sure that the residents along Shepherd Avenue are considered in these plans. So those are the questions that would have to be answered by the applicant.
Andy Croby again, Chief Business and Finance Officer for the district. I'll try to answer as many as I can. Construction would start in an August timeframe. Restrooms on site would occur within the concession stand. So several stalls for both males and several stalls for females would be on site. In regards to the lights, our athletics director is also our head baseball coach, so he would be directly responsible for the lighting on that site. The softball field is on the other side, so the softball field, The foot candles would not approach the neighbor's property. You had mentioned the subdivision going in on the far side. They'll have to cross that entire waterway. So those homes would not be affected whatsoever by the lights in any manner. What were some of the other questions, please, Carrie? Oh, practices. So practices will be held on site. We'll be looking to utilize both Avonshine and the new field. It's important to note that the new fields have turf infields. The rationale for that is spring baseball, which we moved to this year. WIA has eliminated summer baseball. Spring baseball is hard to fit in games given the, say, snow we had 2 weeks ago or last week, and trying to play baseball on that. So having a turf infield allows baseball to be played a whole lot more often given the weather we have in spring. Summer baseball would fall to whether Avonshine happens to be rented or not by the city, whether that's used for community events or whatsoever. But again, our season would be about the end of March to approximately the end of May, would fall in line with all of the spring baseball around the state that is now required to be moved to.
Jason Christensen, Carrie, I can answer regarding the grading. There will be grading along that hillside and all the way up to the property line there. The two baseball fields will be relatively leveled out in the end. So what is now the practice soccer field will be lowered, and what is the current soccer field will be raised in order to get these two fields at the same grade.
Jackie Copland, 9150 South Shepherd Avenue. Our backyard is a big hill that goes down, to the level, and then, like my husband said, it goes down further. So you're saying you're going to lower what is the practice area? That's going to be even lower? Then what are you going to do with our yard? Do you know what it looks like? Have you been there?
Yes, I've been there.
Okay.
We will not be doing any grading in anyone's backyard. The grading will be wholly contained onto the district's property. We will have roughly 4-to-1 grading coming down to the baseball field. 4-to-1 grading is a standard hillside slope.
I'm Schmidt, 9136 South Shepherd Avenue. I'm still confused. There's some trees in that buffer zone. Are you going to move the trees, remove the trees, leave the trees? And the grading around those trees would kind of answer my questions. Are you going to leave that grading by the trees and coming east from that? Are you going to leave that, the way I look at it and the way I seen it, that baseball field, the far right center field fence is right about where the drop-off is, or maybe a little bit into that drop-off. What's the plan in that area? That's my question. Thank you.
The existing trees along the hillside will be removed along with the grading. And again, that's something that we can look at with this buffer zone design that we're going to come up with for redesigning the landscaping to help, alleviate the concern of the trees being removed for the grading purposes.
Blanket,
Most of my concerns have already been raised. I think that there's a lot of concern on the grading, the lighting, and some vegetative cover, some landscaping on this slope up to the backyards of those residents that front on Shepherd Avenue. And on top of that, I thought I saw that these light poles are 60-foot mounting height on some of these lights. Is that right? Because that even still gives me concern about what are they gonna see on the other side? The new subdivision that's going in, are they gonna see that over the trees? So I do think that what I'm hearing is that there's work to be done, to work on what can be done to contain the lighting as much as possible, keep it on the fields, get that vegetative buffer to the properties, and somehow try to, if you can graphically almost show that, what are people going to see? What's the experience going to be? Because once they're up, they're up. And then also with the lights, I think there's probably some kind of shielding or something that maybe the manufacturer has that they deal with this all the time. I mean, we get calls all the time on these things. So,
Carrie, if we can we just should we add a condition so that this comes back for that part of it?
What I'm hearing is that there are several concerns that still need to be addressed somehow. If the Plan Commission is not comfortable with making a motion, you can direct that the item be held until such time as those items can be addressed.
Agree.
Can we also make a recommendation, or I should ask, for this item? I heard that it's possible the residents were not contacted. Is that correct?
Residents were notified of this review process. Whether or not residents were notified of previous school district plan identification or planning for their purposes before it got to us, I can't make that, I don't know. So again, if the Plan Commission isn't satisfied with this, or if you feel like there are more questions than you're comfortable with recommending approval moving forward, then you can direct it to be held.
Yeah.
You can give the applicant some specific things to address specific questions that need to be answered before it comes back to the Plan Commission. We don't have to set a direct time. We will make sure that whenever this review goes forward again, if it is held, that all of the residents are notified again.
I think that will save everybody's time to coming back here.
Dave Copland, 9150 South Shepherd, Oak Creek. Regarding talking what was mentioned about grading plan and grading all the way up to the lot line, well, the lot line in my yard and Mr. Schmidt's yard goes halfway down the hill. So I cut grass, I go down the hill and I turn around and I cut with my mower back up. You're going to put a big retaining wall in there and fill behind that so that it's all level, which would make my backyard level then instead of going downhill. It's something to be considered, some kind of a big retaining wall. Your field will be below that then. It would give us opportunity to put some vegetation or something, up above the retaining wall. So, I mean, if you want to stop over and take a look at it, we can talk about it at the house.
We're going to make a motion, please, to hold this.
I make a motion that we put this item on hold until all the questions are answered.
Anna seconds.
Hold on. Carrie, does that give you enough, or do we need to be more?
Motion to hold is
There
fine.
is someone else who want to talk right now.
Good evening. My name is Devin Kack. I'm the architect. Plunkett Research Architects, 209 South Water Street, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I know that we've been talking about the site and everything, and there's definitely some things to address there, as we've all seen. I'm just curious if there's any comments on the building itself. Thank you.
Too far away from that.
Sorry about that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
If you could restate the motion, please. Motion is to hold.
Motion is made to hold this item till all the questions are answered.
Anna seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Simmons, aye.
Perloy.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Ready, moving on to 6E. Carrie, you ready? 6E is going to be a certified survey map.
proposal is for a certified survey map submitted by Stephen Krager, dividing and reconfiguring the properties at 3961 East Oakwood Road and 10303 South Chicago Road. The proposal would reconfigure the parcels into 4 conforming single-family residential lots. Lots 1 through 3 would be 0.47 acres each, and Lot 4, which will retain the existing dwelling, will be about 0.62 acres. There was a comment from the water and sewer utility that laterals would have to be extended. Just want to make it clear that water laterals would have to be extended at the time that those lots are developed. There's also a 30-foot wide road dedication along East Oakwood Road for future roadway improvements that is identified on the CSM, and wetland areas have been identified. That wetland was delineated by Sewer PAC. That was delineated last year. If the Plan Commission is satisfied with the proposed CSM, there is a suggested motion that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Stephen Krager for the properties at 3961 East Oakwood Road and 10303 South Chicago Road be approved, subject to the condition as listed. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie. Comments, questions?
Be clean.
Make a motion.
Seifert moves that the Planning Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Steve Krager for the properties at 3961 East Oakwood Road and 10,303 South Chicago Avenue be approved with the following condition: that all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordinate, geometry corrections, and corrections required for compliance with the municipal code and Wisconsin's statutes are made prior to recording.
Hannah seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Simmons, aye.
Willow, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
All right. Moving on to 6F. 6F is conditions and restrictions.
As the Plan Commission will recall, at the March 26th meeting, the plan unit development for the property at 7869, 7705, 7725, 7751, 7781, 7811, 7831 South 13th Street were recommended for rezone and plan unit development for a mixed-use development on the properties. And that includes all the properties that are in red on your screen. So if the Plan Commission would turn to the conditions and restrictions, page 4 of 9. Under 2H, prior to the issuance of any permits for any portion of the development, the applicant or landowner shall submit all city-approved certified survey maps for recording. Plan commissioners will recall that there were at least 3 CSMs that were dividing and reconfiguring these properties into several lots, one of which was for a neighborhood hospital and another one which was for a financial institution. The remainder bulk property was going to be combined and possibly subdivided later on. So we do need to have those certified survey maps recorded, and that's what this condition requires. We also are requiring landscaping installed at each phase, phase of the development prior to issuance of occupancy permits. Under 3A, uses allowed within this plan unit development shall be limited to those permitted in the B4 Highway Business Zoning District. These conditions and restrictions, previous authorized conditional use permits, and all applicable sections of the municipal code as amended, except that the following uses shall be specifically permitted: banks, savings and loans associations, and other financial institutions with drive-through facilities. The reason this is here is because we already had a previously approved conditional use permit for that financial institution. Group daycare centers with outdoor activity areas, which are just restating that they are allowed in the district as a permitted use. Indoor commercial recreation facilities, including health clubs and sporting facilities, also an allowed permitted use in the district, just clarifying some language there. And hospitals and day surgery clinics, again, as a previously approved conditional use. A minimum of 30% of the entire land area within the planned unit development shall be set aside as open space. This excludes all impervious surfaces, so no parking lots or anything like that. Principal structures or parts of a principal building shall not exceed 50 feet in height, and accessory structures shall not exceed 17 feet in height. That's per code. Signage will be in conformance with code, and a master sign plan for all development signs and master sign plans for each multi-tenant building will also be required. If you turn to page 5 of 9, under 3I, the owner and operator of the planned unit development shall enter into an agreement with the city for the design, construction, and maintenance of a public trail as depicted on the general development plan prior to the issuance of permits for any phase of the development. Plan commissioners will recall that there was an unprogrammed trail that was through the development. This would solidify that agreement. Under 4, parking and access, we have TIA that has been performed. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So this is just clarifying that that is a requirement, and we do have TIA improvements that will be required as part of the development. Cross-access easement. We do need to change the language in this one, too, to reflect the same language as was with the previous PUD that was reviewed earlier tonight for the multifamily residential plan unit development. The cross-access easement on the north part of this property shall be provided with a copy of the executed agreement provided to the city. So I will wordsmith that language. That'll be reflected in what gets presented to the Common Council, unless there are any objections. Okay. Parking for the development will be in conformance with code. Access is in accordance with executed agreements as per approval with Milwaukee County, and all of those access approvals will have to be copied to us as well. And just as a reminder, there will be no direct vehicular access to Drexel Avenue. Under lighting 5B, pole heights shall be limited to 25 feet within 100 feet of a residential zoning district line and shall not be located within any buffer yard. That is to be mindful of the fact that there are residences that are in the area as well. Under 7, it's clarifying and prescribing buffer yard requirements. And time of compliance under 8. The owner of the planned unit development shall commence work in accordance with these conditions and restrictions within 12 months, and the planned unit development shall expire within 12 months if a building permit has not been issued for the use. And if there are any further questions with the proposed conditions and restrictions, I or the applicant can try and answer those for you. If the Plan Commission is satisfied with these proposed conditions and restrictions, there is a suggested motion that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopts the conditions and restrictions as part of the plan unit development submitted by John Thompson, Highgate LLC for the properties at 7705, 7725, 7751, 7781, 7811, 7831, and 7869 South 13th Street after a public hearing. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie.
I think it's pretty cut and dry. I don't see any problems.
One question. This easement for this cross-access with the property to the north, just looking for confirmation, is this because that property to the north has one entrance, so this would be a secondary entrance emergency use? It will still be a full access, though, for traffic in both directions?
Mike Kresick, Fire Department. I don't know if I can completely answer that based on the planning. I do know that the recommendation from the Fire Department for that access point, there is one access road into the proposed apartment complex. We did express concerns about that early on, and they did state there is a southern point that will exit into this development. Our Our goal is to have that available to us as soon as possible during the development. We understand that they are somewhat in tandem, but as soon as that access point is available and meets fire department requirements in some capacity, we are looking for that as soon as possible.
And Mike, I can just add on to it from a planning perspective, cross-connectivity between the two developments is something that we're also looking at.
Seipert moves that the Planning Commission recommends that the Common Council adopt the conditions and restrictions as part of the planned unit development submitted by John Thompson, Highgate LLC for the properties at 7705, 7725, 7751, 7781, 7811, 7831, and 7869 South 13th Street after a public hearing.
Chandler seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Simmons, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seipert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
That's it. Any other? Everyone should be getting ready. We got the June 1st is going to be our first farmers market, correct? Open
Yes, it
house?
is, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It'll be here before you know it, so get ready. All right. Motion to adjourn.
Grillo moves to adjourn at 7:42.
Seipert seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Simmons, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seipert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, everyone.